My first solo video on YouTube was all about the build-up to the Nintendo Switch, covering rumors and hype leading up to its release. Well, we are now 8 years past that, and a new Nintendo console is just around the corner. The Nintendo Switch 2 releases in the next few days, or is out now if you're watching this past June 5th. So it's time to take a look back at the rumors and hype coming into this new generation of Nintendo. Get your tickets ready, as it's all aboard the hype train for the Nintendo Switch 2. Scouring the internet and starting off with a cheeky bit of help from Wikipedia, as far as I can find, the first discussions of a sequel to the Nintendo Switch were back in early 2019, the same year the Switch Lite released. According to Eurogamer.net, who revealed real information about the Switch 1 before its official reveal, there were two new versions of the Switch on the way in 2019. One targeted at a casual audience that would only be playable portably, which ultimately was the Switch Lite, and the other targeted at a more hardcore audience with better performance capabilities. Fans and media dubbed this the Nintendo Switch Pro, or the much better name of the Super Nintendo Switch. Rumors of the Switch Pro circulated for years, pretty much right up until the official announcement of the Switch 2 in May 2024. It was rumored to have beefier specs, an OLED screen, and some reports said it would even output at 4K when connected to a TV. This rumor was also backed up by reports from Bloomberg that developers were being advised by Nintendo to make their games 4K compatible. In theory, it was possible for the Switch to have this kind of upgrade, with Nvidia's Shield console housing a newer version of the CPU that could output 4K. These rumors, although never confirmed, do seem plausibly true. As we now all know, but were blissfully unaware of 6 years ago, a global pandemic happened between roughly late 2019 till early 2022. It's possible Nintendo planned for the upgraded Switch to be released in that time period, but due to the global supply chain shortage, game development delays, and a whole heap of other issues created by the pandemic, it's likely they decided to delay the Switch Pro under the presumptions that it wouldn't sell particularly well or would struggle at release like the Series X and PS5. It's likely that the delay just pushed Nintendo forward to the Switch 2 instead. Tech YouTube channel Digital Foundry reported in December 2022 that a Switch Pro had been in development, but was cancelled by Nintendo. However, their sources were anonymous, so these were definitely take with a grain of salt level rumors, as other outlets didn't seem to really report on it. Also in September 2021, Nintendo did respond to the Bloomberg report that, to ensure correct understanding among our investors and customers, we want to clarify that this report is not true. Since this was also a statement to their investors, it is likely this was indeed the truth. And since the Switch OLED released in October 21, it seemed likely the rumors had probably just been blown out of proportion and based on the OLED. However, they only said they weren't upgrading the existing Switch 1, and since so many outlets were reporting on these Switch Pro rumors, it now seems more likely that they were actually finding out information about the Switch 2. This is backed up by a new Ask the Developer interview released in May 25, that reveals that the Switch 2 had been in early development since 2019. I imagine they started making prototypes and sourcing materials around 2020 to 21 in order to prepare for a launch around 24 or 25. So any leakers from within Nintendo or any external companies who sent them parts may have assumed that these new components were for a Switch Pro rather than for a Switch 2. So that's the Switch Pro rumors, but when did the true Switch 2 discussion begin? Well, officially Nintendo President Shuntaro Furukawa mentioned a Switch successor in May 22, but only really talking about their strategy for approaching its release, with no details on the system itself. Instead, he just mentioned that they want to have a smooth transition between the generations of consoles, so not really much to pull from here. Following this, there were some fairly minor details and assumptions around the system's potential hardware, but a little more concrete information came from an unexpected source in September 2023. This was from the FTC versus Microsoft case on the purchase of Activision. Internal emails from Activision that were used in the trial revealed that executives had been briefed on the Switch 2 back in December 2022, and that the NG Switch would be comparable to a PS4 or Xbox One. It appears this was our first real information regarding the Switch 2. It was redacted in several areas, but it was clearly an email discussing a meeting with Nintendo's president, Furukawa-san, and something called the NG Switch. The Switch 2 is a bit more powerful than the PS4 and Xbox One, but definitely a comparable power level, and would likely be referred to in that way. Also, since this was used in court and provided directly by Activision, it was 100% a real communication. Also, in September 23, it was rumoured that Nintendo had demoed the Switch 2 behind closed doors to developers at Gamescom in August of that year, with an upgraded version of Breath of the Wild shown running at 4K 60fps. Something we know has a Switch 2 version coming with those upgrades. And they reportedly showed the Matrix Unreal Engine 5 demo that was made available for Xbox and PS5 back in 2021. This rumour does sound credible, as it refers to DLSS and ray tracing being used for the Matrix demo, something the Switch 2 does have confirmed functionality of. So by the end of 2023, we had an idea of the power of the system, the form factor, and a rough rumoured release window of late 24 to 25. But 2024 is when things really started to get interesting and much more concrete. First off, on May 7th, 24, Nintendo President Furukawa-san officially announced on Twitter that the Switch successor would be revealed within the next fiscal year. So basically, any time up until March 31st, 2025. April also came with a huge rumour citing multiple features of the Switch 2, all of which turned out to be true. A larger 1080p screen, larger Joycon that would attach magnetically with metallic ZL and ZR buttons, an additional button below the home button, new buttons on both the left and right Joy-Con, presumably referring to the magnetic release buttons, a dock capable of 4K outputs, and backward compatibility for digital and physical games, and even controllers. This sounds like someone had physically seen the Switch 2, and been briefed on it. We didn't know at the time, but this leak from accessory manufacturer MobaPad was definitely real information, as this was far too accurate to the final design to be purely assumed details. Things were starting to get really interesting, and the hype for Switch 2 was increasing fast, with multiple video game sites reporting on new rumours regularly. Some of them were utter nonsense, such as scrolling bumper buttons, and one of them was the ability to connect the Switch 1 and 2 together physically to make dual screen functionality. But it wasn't until September 2024 where things really started to get out of hand. Images from supposedly a Chinese factory revealed 3D renders and even physical, unfinished controller and console casings of the Switch 2. All of which matched up with the MobaPad leaks and even showed some kind of mouse sensor in the controllers. These images all turned out to be of the real Switch 2, and things only got crazier from there. In October 2024, internal names for the console were leaked from when Game Freak was hacked in summer of that year, with the codename Ounce appearing in documents stating that the next Pokemon game was in development for it. Then on January 5th, 2025, it all came to a head when images of the left Joy-Con leaked, showing the final design of the controller, complete with the tiny writing down the back. This was definitely the real deal. Just 2 days later, on January 8th, accessory maker Genki made likely a career-ending decision at the CES trade show, deciding to showcase and even allow people to touch and measure their dummy Switch 2. What on earth were they thinking? Nintendo is now suing them and will almost certainly win the case. This is one of the dumbest things I've ever seen a company do under an NDA agreement. 8 days later, it appears Nintendo were throwing in the towel on trying to stop these leaks and rumours, and finally revealed the system with this trailer. Roughly 6 years of rumours had come to a close as Nintendo revealed the bigger console, magnetic controllers, and gave hints at its features, such as the new mouse mode. They also gave us just a brief glimpse at something many fans had been waiting for, a new Mario Kart. We also got confirmation of backwards compatibility with Switch 1, and that a full reveal would come on April 2nd, 2025 via a Nintendo Switch 2 focused direct. Many feel this trailer may have been in reaction to the leaks rather than planned, as it doesn't actually show the real console, but 3D renders of it instead. Along came April 2nd and the Switch 2 finally got fully revealed. Some technical features such as a 120 frames per second and 1080p screen, 4K resolution when outputting to a TV, mouse mode, and of course, a whole heap of new games and upgrades to Switch 1 titles, including some very unexpected reveals such as Cyberpunk 2077 and even an exclusive From Software title called The Duskbloods. We also got to see a new 3D Donkey Kong game and the new Mario Kart world in detail, showcasing its open world, new 24-player races, and the most exciting character ever to be in the franchise. This reveal practically had everything I wanted from a Switch 2, which is basically the Switch 1, but more powerful. It even came with more than I expected, with the game share features, 4K resolution, 1080p screen, and even GameCube games on NSO. Zelda The Wind Waker will finally, well hopefully, be on a successful console. For me, the price was exactly where I expected it to be, at just under £400. Sure, Mario Kart World physically was a bit more than expected, but considering you can get it bundled with the console for an extra £35, it was quickly a non-issue for me. Following the reveal, Nintendo held Ask the Developer interviews and regular ones with different news sites, revealing small bits of information and discussing some of their upcoming games. In mid-April, we did have a completely pointless Mario Kart World Direct that revealed basically nothing, but other than that, there has not been much information from Nintendo since the big reveal. But the videos from fans attending the preview events and the Nintendo Today app has given us snippets of info for the past month or so. It's been a really fun build-up to release, and as I record this, I'm only 1 week away from picking up my console at a midnight launch. Some people, likely shop workers, have taken consoles home early, but just like last time when someone got a Switch 1 2 weeks early, they can't do anything with them, even play Switch 1 games, as the Switch is either locked out until the official June 5th release, or requires a day 1 update. So the overall hype is at its peak right now, and I am counting down the hours until I can pick up my system along with Mario Kart World, Yakuza 0, and Fast Fusion as my starting lineup. In comparison to the hype of the Switch 1, I would say I'm roughly equal to my excitement 8 years ago. Even though the Switch 1 launched with Breath of the Wild, one of my favourite games of all time in my favourite franchise, it also didn't release with anything else exciting to me. It was also coming off the back of the disastrous Wii U, a console I personally really enjoyed, but there was definitely a feeling of doom and gloom around Nintendo at the time. Seeing them release a new console at the top of their game is exciting in itself, and the Switch 2 ticks all the right boxes for me. I do miss some of the fun around the Switch 1's hype period though. Not having Reggie Fils-Aimé around this time to reveal it on talk shows, or just the general excitement of a new concept for a console, is not here this time, as it's more of an upgrade than an entirely new idea. Even though that is exactly what I wanted, the mystery of what could happen next is a little bit more predictable than last time. However, that in no way dampens the excitement I have for this console, and it appears it hasn't really for others either. Sure, there was a few weeks of people complaining about the price of the console, just like they did for the Switch 1, and Mario Kart being a bit more expensive definitely kicked up a storm, at least until Microsoft revealed its price increases as well, and Sony hinted that they were going to follow suit. Then of course there's the worldwide tower of fears, which I think made everyone a little more accepting of the new pricing structure. There's been complaints about game key cards, something people don't seem to realise has been part of disc-based video games for about a decade, and just general false information kicking up online that people foolishly believe. Thankfully though, that has all started to calm down, and the hype for the console is at an all-time high. I have my pre-order ready for a midnight collection, and time off work once again to play. The excitement and rumours around Nintendo's 8th generation of home console was an interesting one to look back on, and as we enter into another Nintendo generation, the excitement has only just begun. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Phil, and I'm the creator of the Pixel Tavern. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe to the channel and like the video if you haven't already, and please leave a comment on your excitement and thoughts for the Switch 2. Did you enjoy the hype train leading to its release? Are you getting it day 1? And what Nintendo franchise are you most excited to see on this new system? Please check out the rest of my videos, such as my Zelda retrospective series and more, some of which are on screen now. Until the next video everyone, I hope you have a great next generation of Nintendo, and thank you very much for watching.